What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Back to you with another Down the Middle episode. My name is Nomal.
Ryan.
And today we'll be speaking about Palestine and Israel. So before we even start this video, I'm just going to speak for you as well. Ryan and I just want to let you know that this is a very sensitive topic. It has a lot of layers to it. So you could, don't only watch this video. I feel like you should, or actually you're obligated to research this topic in full length before you make a judgment or an opinion on it. Don't just go through media, because as you can see right now, which we'll get into, media is a big part of this. Just something to keep in mind before making any conclusions.
And yeah, just this is a very aggravating case. We've been doing hours of case notes for this in the past multiple days, just like really stressing out over trying to learn everything about this case, because the thing behind it is that, and this is our first video of many on this. We're going to have people on. I was just talking to one of our closest friends who is Palestinian, who has great relations with this and has he has emotional connection to this case, and we want to have these people on here. Consider that an invite. There's great emotion surrounding this. There has to be great emotion surrounding this, and the media coverage of it is just. And one thing that I'm going to talk about later is just there's just such a divisiveness, and it is pissing me off on how the media is covering this in America. And just our prayers go out to the families of the Palestinian people who are being slaughtered in the streets and being oppressed. There are people on both sides who are dying. Our prayers just go out to these people who are dying. And I mean, that's just where we want to start with that, because this is a full-blown disaster. And studying the facts of it,
in all aspects, really.
The facts of it show that this is a go on.
So we'll be getting into a historical kind of a very, very brief. We want
to keep this one shorter because we're going to go on in length with this, and we just want to kind of introduce you guys to where we are on it and like where it is as we see it.
Right, and then more so focus on the historical facts and then today's present day facts and try and move from there. So right now I'll just start with a historical kind of context for Palestine and Israel. So basically around the end of the 19th century, so around like the 1900s, 1890s, kind of like that, the region of Palestine and Israel currently has been made up of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was controlling that region for about 400 years. And then around after World War I, the British control that area. But mostly it's been made up of Jews. Actually, Muslims are 87%, 10% are Christian, and then 3% Jews. But around that time, they also developed a national identity, and then which eventually became to be Palestinian. That was national identity, right? And then after that, around the 1920s or early 1900s, there was a huge influx of Jewish immigrants to the region. And by the way, they called that region the British Mandate of Palestine, or something along those lines. And the 1920s was the Zionist movement, where it called for the Jewish people to have more of a statehood and to be released from persecution and more have a safe haven and develop a national identity. So that's where they started migrate, and they started migrating to where Palestine and Israel is currently. After that, the Second World War happened, and which is where actually a lot of peace was during that time in the region of Palestine. Which is actually what it was known at the time as well. After World War II, the British gave that region up to the UN. And that was also after the whole Holocaust happened, and then even more migrants have been coming from Europe to that region. Afterwards, the UN decided to give two separate states. So one state would belong to Israelis, and then the other one to Palestinians.
And it was scattered out in a very unorganized fashion.
Very unorganized. It looks like a jigsaw puzzle if you really look it up. And that was around the year of 1947, right? The following year, 1948, the Arab-Israeli War happened. So a lot of the neighboring countries, Jordan, Yemen, Syria, Egypt, declared war on Israel, or Israel's just new state. They didn't... I guess coincide with the whole idea of Israel becoming a new state, especially since a lot of migrants have been coming from Europe and some Arab locations as well. And then that war lasted a year, and then Israel won that war. At the End of that war, they gained the whole country pretty much, besides the Gaza Strip and West Bank. And the West Bank belonged to Jordan. Gaza Strip belonged to Egypt. From the time between 1947 to 1967, more and more Israeli immigrants illegally settled to the West Bank and where Palestinians were located at the time. And then 1967 was the Six-Day War, around the same countries that were involved in the 1947 war. So all those countries were involved, and then after the end of that war, Israel also won that war, but they gained the Sinai Peninsula, gained back the Gaza Strip, West Bank, and then another region that was previously located in Syria. So after that, more and more immigrants came into Jerusalem, and then East Jerusalem, and then as we see currently, East Jerusalem has been a big part of today's events as well. But more so, Israel has kind of controlled the region where Palestine is located.
Yeah, and controlled it in a geographic, literal sense too, because you have 100% was Palestine before 1948, then to 44% in 1967, 22% in, I forget the year, and then today it's 15%. So it's decreased from 100 to now Palestinian control over the region is only 15%. If you look at the map, you'll see it has diminished to just the Gaza Strip, and then there are some in East Jerusalem, just kind of scattered about little settlements there.
Yeah. As more and more Israeli immigrants or settlers push towards more land, it expelled the Palestinians from their own homes. And now the numbers are around, the descendants today make up around 7 million displaced from those regions. That you could obviously see the effects of what's happening now and what's been happening for decades. Then around the 80s and 90s is where, or late 80s, early 90s was where, or when the Hamas group was formulated as a way to, fight back against the Israelis and somehow, I guess, defend or attempt to defend for Palestine. And then, now we'll just move into the events today. But I'm obviously, this is a very brief history. I just really want to point that out. This is very brief. So please do go out and do your research. But I'm obviously skipping over the Oslo Accords, Camp David, and the Intifadas. There's two of them, Intifadas. But please do research that on your own time. But like I said, this is it has so many layers to it. Yeah,
I mean, it's 73 years of fighting, and then on top of that, it's years and years after that as well.
Yeah.
And now where we are with it now is that you have now kind of the theme of it is that in the in Sheikh Jarrah, which is under Palestinian control.
Yeah.
Now there were 4 families that were evicted from homes to replace with Jews, and now this is kind of like the smoke and mirrors catalyst to everything that's happening now. They also are blocking prayer in certain mosques and during Ramadan too. So these are the 2 events that the media is portraying as the reasons why the conflict is now at such a high peak, when realistically it is 73 years of buildup. And this happens that Hamas and these groups they revolt because it's too much, and then Israel comes back and strikes back. These are the events that they're saying are the reason why this is all happening. And now the one thing that I want to get into is I want to look at it from, obviously I don't have the emotional connection to this case that other people have. I don't. I study American politics. I study American history, and this was all very foreign to me. Not in a literal sense. This was stuff to me that I did not know. I knew there was conflict in the Middle East. As a person who studies America in depth, I knew that my focus is on Iran when it comes to these countries, and the Israeli and Palestinian conflict was not one that comes up in the amount that it should. And now you see it today, and because you see it today because the media in America is seeing it as something that they can use to divide us even more. And I want to finish talking about the conflict there first before we get into the stuff that's pissing me off. But I'll give you the floor to kind of finish up, to just explain what's happening there now.
Yeah. So currently, especially in East Jerusalem, there's a lot of it's kind of spearheaded by the IDF, or Israeli Defense Force, where police are kicking out Palestinians out of their homes. And just putting Jewish immigrants in there, or just plainly kicking them out of their homes in general.
And now, if I could just jump in, because we talked about this before, with the deed to this home, this group of homes in Sheikh Jarrah, that the deed dates back to 50 years, and there's a lot of confusion on whether or not it's under Jewish control or under Palestinian control, and who has the right to this home. The eviction, if you're going to sit there and believe that there is true oppression in those places, and this is a real sensible argument, and that there is this discrimination, the fact that they're evicting people out of a home or multiple homes when we're talking about stuff 50 years ago, that now it's coming to light, that does support the argument that there's a lot more going on there than the conservative argument of just peace and then a unjustified response to peace.
Right. And then I also believe that the whole deed thing is just more of a scapegoat.
Yeah.
I think that whoever is, bringing that up is more like just using that as a scapegoat to kind of rationalize and kind of make it make sense for them as to why those things are happening. And you can see that more so on the right side.
Oh, it's... I want to let you finish because I'm like my fuse is like we got into how long were we talking before this?
We were talking about an hour.
I think even a little
about
bit more.
This before we got really hyped, really into it.
Heated conversation because this is crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
But yeah, so just building off of what I just said, that a lot of Israelis are in West Jerusalem and then they're expanding into the East Jerusalem where a lot of Palestinians are through IDF. And they're just beating Palestinians in the streets using rubber bullets. And I came across a video of some Jewish individuals, and there was this whole video of how this one guy was just saying, yes, I mean, obviously this one guy does not speak for everybody, right? And obviously one person can't just have the same idea or represent the whole Israeli nation, right? Mm-hmm. But he was saying that, our goal is our dream is to make West Jerusalem like East Jerusalem. And every week we'll go into each preceding neighborhood and move into each neighborhood and make these neighborhoods Jewish. Yeah. So it kind of, obviously,
we use the term violent gentrification.
I'll let you decide what that really means and what your opinions are about that. But it's just definitely a video that's out there that maybe you should check out. Another thing was Al-Aqsa Mosque, where police just raided the mosque while people were praying in the month of Ramadan, the holiest month of the year for Muslims. And it's just ridiculous. And there was also rocket missiles, right?
Well, like our friend said, is that it seems to be they're using excuses to make these raids and to do these actions. I don't want to say, I don't know if he's okay with this. I'm saying his name, so I don't want to say his name.
For now, no, I guess, but...
Yeah, because he wants to come on, and I'll leave that discussion up to him. But he was saying that he was in Palestine, and he was in one, I don't know what, did he say what mosque? He was in this mosque. And there was a Israeli soldier dressed up as a Palestinian, and they launched a firework as a kind of... look, there's a Palestinian launching a firework. We need to storm the mosque and cause chaos.
Yeah. It also reminded me of actually the Black Lives Matter movement. When last year there was evidence of police officers within the Black Lives Matter movement breaking windows. Yeah. It's incite violence and it's incite chaos. So it's kind of like that. Yeah. That I could relate to.
Yeah. And now what happens now is that you have the Israeli police force and the IDF, there are airstrikes and there are bombs against the Palestinian
Hamas
people. And now I think we had a conversation about this. Hamas, Al-Jihad, Fatah, I think they're terrorist organizations. I think they're undertrained, and I think that the tactic that they use and the people they put in harm make them terrorists. I do believe that. I do think that they are severely the underdog in this fight. And this plays into it as well. Because then they're not untrained because it's their choice and because it's under their own volition. They're untrained because they are freedom fighters. But I think they're terrorists, and they launch attacks from civilian areas, and they know that the Israeli forces can't launch attacks back in, and they kill it. There are innocent people dying on both sides. I think that the media, what they're depicting is that there's clearly an oppressed and an oppressor in this situation. The Palestinians are oppressed. Israeli are oppressors. Israeli is an extremely strong nation pushing down against an extremely weak nation. It doesn't, and we look at that and we can make a decision on how we stand on that. Because the idea that conservatives need to side on one thing and that the liberals need to side on another, and how Fox is depicting it one way, CNN in another, is just complete nonsense. You look at this and you make your decision for yourself. But you also look at the fact that there are innocent people that are dying on both sides. There are calls to violence by the Hamas leaders that I have written here. I have quotes of Mahmoud al-Habash, who's the religious advisor to the dictator, saying that any Israeli who dies will go to hell, and any Palestinian who kills them will go to heaven for killing them. that we talked about in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, how the people are sitting there with rocks, and we made the comparison that they're sitting in there with rocks, but then you have people outside with guns. Does it justify sitting in there with rocks? No. Does it mean that you need to look into it and understand the situation and say they're sitting there with rocks, but then they're outside with guns? This is war that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to finish with that one last quote that I had said to you before. I greatly apologize because I know I'm pronouncing things wrong. Fatal Hamad, a Hamas political bureau member, who says that, who just made a call to action for the people of Jerusalem to cut off the heads of Jews with knives. He goes like this: cut them right here. Knives only cost 5 shekels. This is a real violent conflict from both sides, and one side is a lot stronger than the other. But that doesn't neglect the fact that this is a violent situation that you need to look at both sides of it. Yeah,
and actually touching up on that, what I was saying off camera to you when you brought that up was people in power, and like of course he's a Hamas leader, right? Mm-hmm. People in power and watching their words, right? So, and we were comparing. We were comparing how that's Ian, by the way.
Ian just came in.
He'll be on a different video.
He'll be on in 14 days. He was live on the floor in Palestine, and he's coming back to give us information. How was your trip?
Oh, it was great.
Okay. Anyways, but what I was saying about the Hamas leader and like Maxine Waters, for example, is that Maxine Waters, we know those words have some sort of validity to them because we've seen 2 billion damage through BLM movements, right? And Maxine Waters is calling for violence and chaos if the Derek Chauvin case didn't come out to fruition, right? But for someone like the Hamas leader, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, whatever, I'll just skip his name, but Palestinian people are already afraid. They're already shut down through multiple checkpoints. The military are going into their homes and using their homes as checkpoints, right? So what real effect would his words really do to the Palestinian people other than Hamas themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hamas would be the ones who would really be doing the damage, while Maxine Waters would have much more of an effect to her words.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that pissed me off about that quote the most is that you see a palpable call to action, violent action on both sides.
Right.
And now, I don't know if, is it time to get into the American component of it, or do you have more to say about it?
I forgot my other point, but it's fine. We can just move on.
Well, we'll go back and forth. If you remember it, come back in with it.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is that the media is depicting this as Palestinians are being oppressed, the Israelis are oppressors. This is true. Okay, did you get it?
Yeah, I did. Going back to the whole left and right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing with the way the media is portraying it. Well, first of all, like I was saying off camera, is that this whole thing was already politicized before we even like thought about it. Like this is politicized for years, where the left is siding with Palestine and the right automatically sides with Israel. And there's like this checklist where if you're on the left side, okay, you believe in this, this, and that. And the right side, you believe this, and that. Like everybody has a checklist, so now media works off those two things and incites emotion through whatever. It's not like whatever information they want to give out.
Yeah, and that never used to be the case. Both sides used to be bipartisanly pro-Israel. In 1995, there was a bill passed for the Jerusalem Embassy Act, where Joe Biden was the leading cheerleader for it from the Democratic Party. It got bipartisan support to pass this. This was the move that allowed Trump to move the embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv in 2017, which was a huge thing, and it was a violation of the international law. The act was only possible because of bipartisan support from the United States Congress. It became more of a party of the GOP in the 1990s when they had a leader, and I'm not going to attempt to say his name, but he was very close to Ronald Reagan, and he adopted neoliberal economic standards that led Israel to becoming, what was it? It was regional security, economic prosperity, and democracy were the three values that they correlated to America in That was in 2017 was when they made that statement, but that movement started in the 90s. And now you have 70% of Democrats who support Palestine becoming a free state, 44% of Republicans. That was never the case. It used to be both sides were in support of Israel, and Palestine was...
But in the 90s, though.
Before the 90s.
Both sides were...
Yeah, okay. Were Israel support, and now it's shifted. And now it's gone to the Democrat side. And the thing is...
But I also feel like that's because more information is coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also, I'm sorry, also to cut you off, I'm sorry, but also that during those times, especially, that we were more, we were definitely supporting Israel in general through funding as well. And even to this day, we're still funding them.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially their military, we're funding as well.
Yeah, I mean, even in Joe Biden's plan, there's $3.8 billion that goes to the Israeli military.
Yeah, we're actually funding them. We have a 10-year deal where we're funding them $3.8 billion per year since 2016.
Yeah.
Or from 2016, rather.
So, I mean, here's one thing I want to say. And obviously, I am a conservative, and I want to talk about this from a moderate standpoint. And all of most people on the right are very pro-Israel. Trump was very, very pro-Israel. And I understand the United States siding with Israel on this. When you have a nation that is promising you things economically, is promising you things on a democratic basis, military support, you side with them. I am not going to sit here and say that I don't understand the United States decision to side with them. When nations promise you things and they're what's better off for you, nations care about money and they care about power, and this is the root of it.
Right. It's at the end of the day, it's not a right or wrong thing. Nations don't look at a right or wrong thing. They look at what can help me and how can I get ahead. Mm-hmm. And that's really what the position that U.S. is in by funding Israel.
And now here's the thing: now we have to make a case today because the United States is the world leader in peace.
Yeah,
Then this is where we get into my big issue with this. We are the not self-opposed, but we are the
leader of the free world.
We are the appointed leader of the free world. We are the world democracy. The stock exchange of the entire world comes out of New York. Washington D.C. is the capital of the world. Yeah. The currency. Everybody acknowledges, and you talked about the comment on the video from Sean King, because we watched a Sean King video, and there was a woman who said that it's not our issue. We don't need to step into this. And this was the big thing it dates back all the way to George Washington about American intervention in foreign affairs.
Yeah, that comment pissed me off because she was really trying to put the point like, that's not our problem. We should take care of ourselves. It's none of our business. But as a leader of the free world, we have a moral duty to be the leader of the free world and act like it, right?
And this is what pisses me off, because this is the big thing about electing, and Donald Trump did this wrong. Because Donald Trump was pure peace through strength, and peace through strength has a lot of sensibility.
There's a lot of cons to it too.
Theodore Roosevelt carry a big stick.
Yeah,
I don't forget the whole quote. It was speak softly, carry a big stick. Okay, so peace through strength is a great thing. But now, peace through strength has a lot of cons too. When we're talking about conflicting sides, where one side is way oppressed by the other side, peace through strength is not the thing to apply here. Now, what we talked about, America could step into this issue and could settle this in a diplomatic type of rational sense in a day.
Yeah, it goes back into what Ben Shapiro was saying, that de-escalation is more of a glorified term in America, and we try to attribute to everything. And yeah, sure, you could say that, and in the sense that how we attribute it to the police force, right? There's a lot of situations where there may not have been an ability to de-escalate, but a point that we have to drive home is that we're the leader of the free world. We have the power to de-escalate what we want.
Anything we want.
If we really want to, we could step in there and really de-escalate it today.
When the coronavirus hit and Joe Biden got elected, this was what the world should have been on alert for. We had a cyber attack this week that cut off 45% of our fuel supplies to the southeast of the United States. We're saying it was a foreign cyber attack. There's no repercussions. There's barely mentioning of it. China, the biggest greenhouse emissions in the world, more than every other first world nations combined. No repercussions. Genocide over the Uyghur Muslims. No repercussions. Coronavirus. No repercussions. Who is to think that Joe Biden is going to step into this conflict and settle this? What is he going to do? He's giving $3.8 billion to the Israeli military, and now he's giving $290 million to the Palestinians. He's funding the conflict. And even better, because just like we keep on adding on, now the Iran nuclear deal. So Iran is the superpower the Iran nuclear deal, what it means is that we're funding Iran to build nuclear weapons. By 2031, we want them to have a nuclear arsenal.
Yeah.
The point behind this, now Trump canceled this because Donald Trump said that we don't want to give terrorists big guns. And now the thing is, we're funding them to do this so they can take over the conflict. They can compete with Israel, and then this will lead to Palestinian freedom. When in reality, that is a total cop-out of the situation. That is a horrible idea, and this is why, if you've been studying the news, you saw this kind of abstract story from a couple days ago where there was a Navy Coast Guard ship off the coast of somewhere, and there were 13 Iranian speedboats that started circling and taking unsafe maneuvers against the Coast Guard ship, and we had to fire off warning shots to get rid of them. And I saw the story, and I was thinking, what is the point behind this? Why would Iran? It seems like they're teasing us. They know Joe Biden is weak. They're pushing him for the money so they can start this project. And, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all. America, as the world leader in peace, we need to step in there. We need to first and foremost, get the innocent people out of these areas. Like we were talking about, soldiers fight wars. This is what happens. You want to call Hamas, Jihad, the IDF, the police, you want to call them soldiers? They're soldiers. They fight the wars. There are innocent people getting bombed and killed on both sides, and that's a horrible thing. And it's so senseless to me that we can't step into this as the strongest country in the history of the world, see a real issue. I get it, Joe. You're scared of China. I understand. You're not scared of Palestine. You're not scared of Israel. Like, it doesn't make sense why we can't step into this and just calm this situation down. De-escalation is a perfect thing. There's nothing wrong with de-escalation. Yeah. And we're not the only nation who can do it. Like you said before, that you hope that another nation steps up and does this.
See, what I was saying was that if we do see another nation step up to this, like because we're talking off camera as well, we signed up to be the nation's or the leader of the free world. We signed up for that seat, and now we have to uphold that duty, right? And now if we see some other country, doing the job that we should be doing, right, and has that power to do it, then how does that make us look?
Exactly. We don't deserve that position. We don't. And China's not going to step up and do it. Let's see Russia step up and do it. Because if we're not going to advocate for Muslim women getting sterilized in China, and we're not going to advocate for Palestinian people getting completely oppressed and destroyed by a stronger force, and try to bring balance to this situation that has been in complete disarray for 73 years.
For decades.
If we're not going to step in and take care of these things rationally, like the world leader, the thing about being a leader is that your use of force is the last resort. You should be able to, if I'm the leader of my gym, I should be able to speak to my people and get them to rally behind me without having to physically push them to do so. They should rally behind me. If we want to step in here, and we should be able to, and we are able to, make a case for peace in this area and make some kind of compromise between these nations, bring them together without funding conflict. Since when was funding conflict the way to stop conflict? The only way that happens if the Palestinians are wiped out. That's it.
Man, the topic is, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, before we even said a single word, it's very sensitive and has a lot of complicated issues. And you're going to go home and you're going to watch the podcast and pretend that we lied to you. This whole, like I said in the last podcast, we lied to you at every single thing we just said, right? You have to go out there and...
Except for Joe Biden being bad.
Yeah, that's probably not a lie. But you have to go out there. And this goes with any issues that you see in the world, and let alone the world, us as well, in the U.S. as well. We have a great tendency to not go out of our way to find information and make a decision. And this is literally the theme we see in all of our videos, right? Mm-hmm. Go out of our way to find information and educate yourself. And I feel like a lot of that's not happening. And if we really did, it would make a huge difference to at least our communities in terms of knowledge and actually what we do in terms of action, but also just in terms of viewpoint on the case as well.
And let me just say this, because as a conservative, I have a lot of conservative friends, and I see what they're posting, and they're posting pro-Israel, and I have a lot of liberal friends that are posting pro-Palestine. I think that the Palestinian people need to be advocated for, and I think that Hamas, Jihad, all these terrorist groups need to be condemned, just like in America. White supremacists, Antifa needs to be condemned. Anyone who is harming innocent people needs to be condemned. But the vast majority of Palestinian people are innocent. Like you said, in the Ottoman Empire, this state was, Christians were there, Muslims were there, Jews were there. It was just that's a beautiful thing. That reminds me of something we call America, where multiple groups can come together and exist. Yeah. I think that the innocent and the non-radical Palestinian people needs to be advocated for, because they're going to get wiped out if they don't. Yeah. And I hate the fact that, because I just hate the fact that, like, in 2021, if you're a conservative, it means you hate vaccines, and it means that you're racist, and it means that you hate women, and it means that you're pro-Israel. And all these things are just directly correlated and associated to you without you even having to think. Because if you're a conservative, then everything that popped up on your newsfeed on Instagram yesterday was that Israel is just defending themselves, and Israel is justified in this violence. And you can believe that, but go and look it up yourself. And if you're a liberal, I'm sitting here and I'm saying that I want the innocent Palestinian people to be spoken for. But I see my liberal friends who are posting up all the clips and everything, but I know they're misinformed. And that pisses me off too. You can, like our friend, we're not saying, he knows our friend too, but we're not saying his name because I don't know if he wants to say his name. He said that as a Palestinian person who's grown up in this culture for his entire life, he it was 2014. So what we were young. We were very young.
Sophomores in high school.
He distances himself from the culture and from the religion, did his own research, and then came back to the religion under his own volition. That's the big thing here.
Yeah, he asked himself a really important question, which is that do I support this conflict because I'm Palestinian, or do I support this conflict out of my moral
obligated,
no, what's the whatever, moral obligation. Let's go with that. So that's a big point that we want to really drive home. And also another point that I want to drive home is that don't make yourself become a checklist.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially for media. Don't make yourself become like, okay, well, you side with this and you probably believe in this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have to take every single thing, every event exclusively from each other.
It's called moderation.
That's what we try to work on in this podcast.
America's supply of moderation is just so vastly low.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, and also, I think also a reason for like the people that side with one side or the other is that, especially, for example, for the right? If you see someone like that's on the right side, let's say with you, you're more likely to believe that same notion, right? Mm-hmm. And especially if your whole feed, like you just said, was pro-Israel. So then you're like, okay, then maybe I should start believing that. And the same thing goes with the other side too. That's the wrong way to go about it.
I mean, like you said, don't be a checklist. Don't go and get your own views for yourself. It's the American idea, and the idea that here we are in America. One of our greatest traits about America is the freedom of religion. Now I'm a Christian, and just like our Palestinian friend who we're talking about, I came to Christianity myself. I had my dad on the podcast the other day. He is a devout Christian. He led me up in Christian values. I distanced myself from the religion. I did research myself. I studied all the religions, and I came to this conclusion for myself. That's what you have to do. We advocate for freedom of religion. There are a bunch of innocent Palestinian people who have been oppressed for years, and there's no freedom. There's no freedom there. And the fact that we can sit here and say as conservatives that we don't want to find a way to stand up for those people and condemn the terrorists too, because newsflash, you can do both. All right, you can get rid of the evil people and advocate for the good people.
You could advocate for both sides and be against.
That's kind of like the point of the whole thing in this this world thing, is that we can do bad things to the bad people, and that's okay because they're bad. But then we can protect the good people, and if it was all good people, then we'd be in a better spot.
I really blame that on how media is, though, because I feel like media makes us feel like we have to become one of those checklist boxes and have to side with one side, and you can't have an opinion or be on both sides or try to see it in a moderate way.
Exactly, and this is just the beginning of the research we've done for this. I did hours and hours of research. If I followed CNN, and let's say I followed CNN, all I know is that Palestinians are getting completely, objectively murdered by the Israeli government for no reason. That's CNN's outlook on it. And you can make a case that they are being oppressed. You can make a case that the Israelis are stronger. We've spoken about all those things. But there's no facts there. Those are just CNN is putting this narrative out. If I follow Fox News, then the Hamas and Jihad, they're firing thousands of rockets into Israel, and now Israel is striking back. And they're justified to strike back. Yeah. True things. But where is the pretense of that? Why is it happening? How long has it been happening? And
see how little they give you?
They give you so little.
They give you so little, and it's not like I was telling Ryan off camera as well. The point of news is not to give you the right information. It's just to give you things that will make you feel a certain way to make you side with the side.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, that's how it is. They're not interested in telling you what information that you should know. That's not how news goes. A lot of people don't realize that to this day.
To the people on the right, you need to look at this. You need to understand. You need to decide who you're advocating for, who you're condemning. Because in every case of conflict, there is a side that you can advocate for and a side you can condemn. And you need to understand which side you're on, but do it for yourself. Donald Trump was peace through strength. He made Israel super strong. And the fact that the Palestinians knew if they fought back, they would be killed immediately. That is not the way. That is not a diplomatic solution to anything.
That's more dictatorship, honestly.
Now, Now, to the liberal side of this, liberals are all about peace and prosperity of all people. Now, you have to understand there are calls to violence from the Palestinian people too. There's a lot there. Mahmoud Abbas is the leader of the Palestinian, and he's in the 17th year of a 4-year term. There's a lot. This is a fact.
Nuts.
He canceled. There was an election in the first week of April that he canceled because he's scared that the Hamas leader will win that election, and then the Palestinian state will be taken over by terrorists. Hamas, There's a lot going on in this case. We spoke about Black Lives Matter cases that we explained that it's never cut and dry. cases as simple as a body cam footage of a girl about to get stabbed and she gets shot, and it's not cut and dry. We're still learning stuff about that fact. You think that 73 years of conflict can be boiled down to what Fox News and CNN are telling you?
Right. Think about that. We had a long video about a 9-second scene.
It's a 9-second clip.
A 9-second clip, and we're here. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many layers to it. Like Ryan said.
So, I mean, we're going to come back with this. We have a lot of people. I mean, I know that we have a good base of Palestinian people. I know that we have a good base of conservative people. And this is just an invite to come and talk to us about this.
And that's what we're here for, to talk about it. We're not here to, like, project our opinion and make sure, like, you guys follow our opinion. That's not what we're here for. You know, we're not these news outlets to try and make you side with the side. We want you to come on and say what you feel and then maybe have a conversation, as with any other topics we talk about on this podcast.
And just, like, come in contact with us. We're going to have a lot more on this because I bet everything I have, this is not going to end soon. My down the middle recap is to do your own research, understand both sides, don't be a checklist, and that I am very disappointed in America and that we should have seen this coming with how we treated China after everything they've done and with Joe Biden's inability to step onto the world stage and be a true leader. That we should have seen the fact that we're just going to let things like this happen and that we're just going to fuel conflict, and it's disgusting. It's really like there's a lot of emotion from obviously people in the Middle East towards this. Justified, it has to be there. But then Americans, there should be a lot of emotion as well to the fact that we are the world leader. We're the strongest nation in the history of the world, and that we can't do anything about these things in other nations because our politicians are too worried about pronouns and gender and social constructs than people getting murdered in the Middle East. And I don't know. That's absurd.
I'll just leave it off at that.
That's absurd. So we'll catch you guys soon, okay?
Yeah.
Peace out.